Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Johnny Vlogs. I'm John Lorden. Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon supporters Sid Sperling as well as Patricia French. Thank both of you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I truly appreciate it. We've been able to do some great things now because of your support at Patreon, and it's just helping the channel grow. Speaking of growing, just over this past weekend, we hit the 3rd birthday of the Geek and Dorks channel. So thank you for all of your support. I did just want to talk about what this ride has been like, just to leave it out there for anyone else that might be thinking about getting into YouTube and what they could expect for a channel to grow kind of at least at the pace that I've been growing. The first year was almost like talking into an empty hallway somewhere. And it was really about experimenting and just playing around with things and trying to figure out what type of content would I be motivated to create going forward that would keep me coming back, keep me setting up the lights and the camera, keep me interested in terms of popping back up on the internet over and over. And I played with a whole bunch of different formats. It was a really good year just for the technical skill set, for working with sound and editing and green screen and bringing all that together, and of course, writing content, producing content. So year one, it's almost a good thing that there isn't necessarily a whole lot of people watching, because you can really take some stumbles, try some extreme things out, and see how they work for you. And I'm definitely proud of a few projects that I kicked off very early on. I had this segment I did where I still am a fan of Ricky Gervais, but I used to be a much bigger fan of his. Unfortunately, I started following him on Twitter, and I have no problem with people being atheist at all, but the way that he was lashing out at other people, and in particular, there was one conversation I saw between him and someone that it's just an account, so I don't know if this person was necessarily as young as their account seemed, but it seemed like he was lashing out at someone that was very young about their religious beliefs. And one of my early projects was just a conversation between me, John, and Ricky Gervais, which was also me playing Ricky Gervais. But I based it on actual tweets that I grabbed from his Twitter account. So just in terms of having fun with content, thinking about how you could use information like that in kind of a fair use format, and having some fun comedically, I really liked that project. It's a bit debatable if you agree with the content or not, but I kind of built it like a two-way discussion, so it actually represents both sides of that argument, I think, fairly well. And then when we got into year two, it was really about, at that point, I kind of had the mechanics down. I was starting to learn how YouTube was going to react to my content. Starting to get enough views where I started thinking about turning on ads and some things like that. But still, the viewership wasn't really popping like crazy until the middle of that year. And of course, that's when I bumped into Brain Scratch. And Brain Scratch, for anyone that wonders where that came from, it's really a response from me to the YouTube community about a specific type of video that's out there. And it's usually like a conspiracy theory based video, or channels that like to post ghost stories, or channels that like to go into alien coverage and stuff like that. And it's not to debunk them necessarily, but it is to try to find the truth of their statements and what they're representing. And that's kind of the launch point for all of a sudden where all of you started jumping in, and all of a sudden my viewership was climbing very regularly. And it's strange because I did an interview for German radio, and they were asking, has this changed me? And I think I said in that interview that it hasn't quite changed me. Like, he was asking, are you more paranoid now, and things like that. And I'm not really more paranoid. If anything, I feel like it's made me a bit more critical of the information that we're getting. And I think a great example of that, or a great example of me struggling with that, was on the Bianca Carrasco brain scratch searchlight case, because I was looking to media sources, and even, it's one thing if we hear it on YouTube, you have to take it with a grain of salt if you get it on YouTube. But when we look to our major media sources, I think that you have to take it with a little bit less of a grain of salt until that case. To hear from her sister that so much of the information that was out there was just not correct. Really, I already had this feeling about not wanting to trust mainstream media because I know that their motivations are controlled by financial interests. So it's not like the old days where you had a struggling reporter that was working in a company somewhere trying to make sure the truth got out there no matter what. I don't believe that that type of person is in mainstream media. I believe now you're going to find that person on YouTube with their own channel and trying to spread the truth that they're finding out there through that medium. And because of that, I think it's even making mainstream media, in particular the news of mainstream media, less and less effective, less and less truthful. And I don't know that it's any more than becoming almost like a morning radio show or something like that, where you just have a bunch of personalities that you're watching day after day because you kind of like their personalities, and they're telling you stories, and the facts behind those stories, in my experience, they're just getting looser and looser with how they report these things. And it is more of a mockingbird effect where, this one tweets this over here, this one hears that and retweets it over there, and no one's doing any fact checking on anything. It's literally just, they reported it, so we're reporting it. And it's weird because with the Bianca Carrasco thing, I fell into that too. I was like, all right, well, look, I've got multiple sources saying the same thing. That must be right? And as I found out in that case, it isn't really right. So one of the great things about this last stretch in terms of developing for Brain Scratch is now I'm finally getting enough audience under me that people are feeling more and more comfortable reaching out to me, for example, like Bianca's sister. It's becoming more viable to them. They're seeing that there's more value in my channel because of all of you viewers out there. And that is a huge, huge change. And hopefully that's just going to keep propelling me into getting better and better information, which has been my goal from the start. I'm seeking the truth constantly, and trying to relay that to other people. And part of that, there's this weird little side effect. Part of that is reserving the right to be incorrect. And this is something that I struggled with a bit because in big business, when you're working in a large corporation, if you try to put something out there and you're testing it and you know that it might not be right, and people see that, they're like, wow, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's totally wrong about that. Well, how do we get that information back to correct what those misperceptions are, or those misconceptions? I'm not sure which way to go with that. See, I was just incorrect, and I'm waiting for all of you to let me know. So there is a benefit for me personally, because I find that so many people are scared to be wrong. They are scared to put out information where someone can come back and almost impeach them like we're living in a court of law or something, and then invalidate everything else they're saying. Am I doing that to mainstream media in some way? Maybe it feels like that. I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky thing, but what I like, at least about what I'm doing on YouTube, is if I am incorrect about something, if someone gives me the information, all of a sudden you're going to see a follow-up episode, usually very quickly, and it's going to be correcting that previous information. And if you go and bump into the old video, you're probably going to find a text box in there where you can click on that to get the newest and latest information. I am not seeing any mechanics like that working in terms of mainstream media. They put out a story. If there is not enough interest in that story, you're never going to hear about that story again. If they were 80% wrong, 100% wrong, it doesn't matter. I do not see these big companies that are spending any time or effort in terms of correcting the messages that they're putting out. And I think that's a shame, because the technology is obviously there. If some little guy that does everything himself is able to hold himself to that high of a standard, I don't know why media companies can't. So that was a little tangent off off where we were going for the third year of the channel. But so what's coming up for this year? I'm hoping more radio appearances. I really enjoyed the last one I did, and once again felt like there was value in it because it did not turn into some type of screaming match or something where people are trying to impeach each other like I was talking about. Well, you were wrong about this one fact, so everything you're saying is wrong. And I think that the holistic doctor debate is an important aspect of this conversation that needs to happen. And I just want to thank Heather Wade and Midnight in the Desert for having me and Erin Elizabeth on. I think that it was a great way to bring up that debate and to try to get truth once again. Or even if we can't get to the truth yet, to represent two different sides of that perspective and to do it in a respectful way, which I was very proud that both myself and Erin, I think we conducted ourselves very well in that interview. And because of that, I think there's a lot of value for listeners of that. So if you're interested in hearing that, I think you have to have a subscription, but you can go to midnightinthedesert.com. There is an archive there. I don't know if they'll let you buy a single episode, but I got to tell you, after being on the show, it was very well produced. The host is very insightful. She adds a lot of very useful information, and of course she keeps the conversation on track and keeps it moving forward. And there was an open phone line section in the third hour. That's one thing. This is the first time that I've been on the radio for 3 hours straight, and it was especially because it was starting at midnight my time here. It was pretty crazy, but it included 2 full hours of Erin and I going over all these facts, and then the third hour they were taking phone calls, which I thought was really cool, and you could hear from the public kind of the aspects that they thought were most important about these cases, which of course is super important. So of course, I'm still working on my own podcast, getting that up and going. It's still a bit tough to juggle everything with the recent move. I've got a house that I'm selling back in California. I actually have to fly back out there to finish all that up. But as soon as all that settles down, I have to buy some equipment, and then I should be ready to start my podcast. I know many of you are excited about that. I am too. Once again, I'm just looking forward to starting something new, learning some new skills, and then seeing where that goes and how that grows from there. And maybe, in a couple years, we'll be celebrating the 100th episode of that podcast. Oh, did I not mention that yet? That's right. On top of us having the birthday of my channel this past weekend, this upcoming week, we will hit our 100th episode of Brain Scratch, which is mind-boggling. I've had Geek and Dorks Reviews has been a show that has been with me through this whole YouTube thing. I think in the very first vlog I did, when I sat down on a toilet seat and turned on the camera and decided to shoot a bunch of vlogs, I did a review right off the bat. So Geek and Dorks Reviews is probably my longest running series, but we only have, I think, 97 episodes of that right now. Brain Scratch, because of adding the Brain Scratch Searchlight show and essentially doing 2 shows of Brain Scratch a week for the past several weeks, that has really upped the episode count. So this week, actually on Wednesday, the new episode of Brain Scratch Searchlight is going to be the 100th episode of Brain Scratch. So that is yet another milestone that I am very proud of, and I'm just happy to have found that show that I love producing and that you guys love watching, and I'm hoping that there will be many more episodes of Brain Scratch far into the future. So a couple big milestones this week I wanted to share with you guys. Hope you liked the personal insight on channel growth. Oh, one more thing. I know that I've spoken before about how YouTube is having trouble monetizing some of my content. There has been this very cool change in that whole system now, where essentially you finally get notified, which is already a huge step in the right direction, because before they would just kind of turn off the ads on certain videos and not tell you about it. Now you actually get an email specifically about what what episode has been unmonetized, and they give you an option to force a manual review. You can actually go back into that episode, say, hey, have someone check this episode again. I believe it is advertiser friendly. And from my experience so far, for most of the videos that I've been kicking through that second check process, the ads are getting turned back on. So this could be a very cool step, and it would help me a lot because so many of my biggest videos have had the ads taken off of them. So steps in the right direction. It's nice to see even the YouTube platform is growing. I'm still wondering what's wrong with that first check, why so many of my videos are having the ads pulled off immediately. For example, the Jameson family video that I just released last week, on the day it was released, they pulled the ads off of it, which really sucks because usually first and second day are where most of my views are going to kick in, especially for regular Brain Scratch viewers. However, by somewhere in the second day or third day, I had put it through that second review process, and all of a sudden the ads got turned back on. So if nothing else, it's something to work with. It's going to help me keep doing this in a pretty major way if I can get all of my shows to have ads on them. So I'm hoping that that's going to continue and work out. So big updates, a lot of good momentum. I'm really feeling it, and I just want to thank each and every one of you out there for being a part of this with me. I cannot do it without you guys, and you know how much I appreciate the comment sections and how all that fills up. As a matter of fact, for this particular episode, since we're talking about the next year of Geek and Dorks, please let me know if you have any suggestions. Just that simple. Any suggestions on things you think I should try, things you think I should do, things you think I'm doing that I shouldn't do. I am open ears and looking forward to seeing your thoughts on that. So please use the comments below for your suggestions for the next year of the Geek and Dorks channel. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having an awesome week, and I look forward to catching you on the next show on the Geek and Dorks channel. Take care.